When it comes to productivity at work, are we measuring it all wrong? When we talk about managing people, the question of performance management always comes up. And really, productivity and performance, they're like brothers and sisters or partners, depending on how you want to look at it. But here's the thing, we throw the word productivity around a lot without really unpacking what it really means and how we should measure it. And so today I want to do something different. I've been reading this article from the CIPD and I want to walk through some of its key points with you, challenging how we think about productivity. Because measuring productivity can be simple or as complicated as you want it to be. And that's exactly where the issue lies. Hello if new and welcome back if here again. Today we're diving into a topic that's at the heart of every organization's success, which is productivity. How do we measure it? What influences it? And how can we boost it without burning out our teams? If you've been grappling with the productivity puzzle, which has been a hot topic for a while now, you're not alone. With over a decade's experience in HR, I've seen how productivity can be both a goal and a challenge. And today I want to share some insights by reviewing this article from the CIPD's newsletter, which I think is the edition that ends, it says here edition that ends January 2025. And in this newsletter, there's an article by Abby Dawson which touches on productivity. And so by reviewing this, we may have a better or a different perspective on productivity. So this article starts by defining what productivity is. And it says that productivity is doing as much work as possible in a particular period. It sounds simple, right? But when you actually try to measure it, things get murky. Because productivity isn't just about doing more, it's about doing more of the right things. Because I could spend all day coloring, which I love to do, from 9 a.m., starting at 9 a.m. and ending at 11 p.m. So that makes me busy, right? But what am I busy doing and for which purpose? And then it then goes on to talk about the UK's productivity problem. And for over a decade, the UK has been facing the so-called productivity crisis. And research shares that between 2010 and 2022, GDP, I will not pretend to know this definition by heart, so I'll read it out. And GDP means gross domestic product, and it counts all outputs of the country to the value of the goods and services produced over a period of time. And so going back to the research information that stated that between 2010 and 2022, the UK's GDP grew by about 0.5%. That's 0.5% in 12 years. Meanwhile, countries like France and the US have been moving ahead. But here's the thing, other financial experts or economists do not believe that GDP tells us everything because it doesn't measure how people work, what value they create, or how many unnecessary meetings they are stuck in. This article then shares a fascinating example of a misguided productivity measurement that came from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the Manchester United boss, who made headlines for mandating staff to return to the office. Why? Because he noticed that email activity dropped on Fridays. But think about it, were those emails meaningful discussions or just noise? Did they include research, deep thinking, and collaboration, or were they just endless back and forth replies that could have been resolved in a 30-second chat? It's actually amazing that such a huge decision about working arrangements was made based on the email volume alone. This highlights a major issue. It shows that many businesses still use outdated surface level metrics. And this reminds me of the iceberg model, where we tend to look at things in terms of what we see. You know, imagine the iceberg and we tend to look at what it is that we see. So for example, we see the email sent and maybe the tasks ticked off and hours logged. But actually, what drives that productivity? And that's below the surface, which could be deep thinking, problem solving, collaboration, emotional energy, and motivation. And so focusing only on surface level metrics is a dangerous trap because it ignores the real work happening below. And then there's also the illusion of presenteeism in the workplace. Put a thumbs up emoji in the comments box, in the comment section, if you have ever sat in the office staring at the screen, but actually doing nothing productive. Don't worry, I won't tell you about it. But presenteeism is the idea that just because someone is at work, means that they are productive. Research actually proves that more hours does not equal more productivity. In fact, presenteeism costs more than absenteeism because people are at work and disengaged, tired, and just going through the motions. And it's why engagement has become such a hot topic, because we're all trying to avoid that and drive engagement in the workplace. So if we really care about productivity, we need to stop measuring time spent working and start focusing on the value created. This is a message to my subscribers. A huge thank you to all of you who have subscribed to my channel. But I've had about 100 views from non-subscribers. And so if you're interested in what I share, I would really appreciate your support if you subscribe to help grow my channel. So then there's also Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time available for the completion. So if you've ever noticed that if you give yourself a whole day to complete a task, you will somehow take the whole day. But if you only have maybe an hour, you can suddenly get it done much faster. And it's happened to me when I have to maybe declutter a room. When I say I'm going to use the whole day to do decluttering, I get time and I fill it up with so many other different things. But if I know that I have to declutter within an hour because I've got other things to do, I do it with such efficiency that I'm able to finish it within that time period. And so this is why measuring productivity by hours is flawed. If people are giving 8 hours, they will spread their tasks out. But if we focus on efficiency and outcomes, we unlock smarter ways of working. And so going back to Jim Ratcliffe's mandate pushing for the Manchester United staff to return to office, many businesses and workers are asking this new question as to whether hybrid working or remote working is over. I think it's been since 2020, hybrid working has become the norm for many. In fact, the Office of National Statistics data shares that over a quarter of UK adults work in a hybrid way. But we see in the news and hear about big name companies pushing for a return to work. So are we seeing the start of a shift back to the office? Of course, hybrid work has clear benefits such as cost savings, fewer commutes, better work-life balance, and wider access to a wider pool of talent. But let's be honest, not everyone is convinced, and I don't think they were convinced even from the beginning. Many leaders, especially, and business owners worry about productivity, company culture, and training junior staff. But before making any changes like what Jim Ratcliffe was proposing, you need to ask these critical questions. 1, do you really need to stop all hybrid and remote working? Because scrapping it entirely could lead to more problems than it solves, from legal risks to lower retention rates. The second question is, how will this impact flexible working requests? With new UK laws strengthening flexible request rights, formal requests could increase. And once granted, it becomes difficult to reverse without a very good business reason. The third question to reflect on is whether there are any contractual risks. Because if hybrid working has become the norm, changing it may require consultation and even contract amendments. Get it wrong and legal challenges could follow. And so for business leaders and managers or HR professionals listening in on this, before making any decisions, step back and diagnose the real problem. Is hybrid or remote working actually failing, or are there other barriers such as inconsistent management, or maybe a change in the stakeholder needs of a business? And most importantly, will bringing people back actually solve the problem you're trying to fix? The article talks more about global productivity, and Luxembourg stands out. I was even surprised by this. It talks about their economic success and that it wasn't just about luck, and that it was built on strategic investments in knowledge, skills, and human capital. Nigel Driffield, and he's the international business professor at the Warwick University, pointed out in this article as well that the UK has focused so much on efficiency, not enough on investing in people. And so the lesson here is that cutting training budgets to save money is like stopping the clock to save time. It just doesn't work. And I always talk about the cycle when it comes to performance management, and the short cycle is that you expect people to perform, but there's also the learning that is required to enable them to perform better, the reflection, learning, performance, and that's the cycle that enables productivity. So the article really brings out that productivity isn't just about hitting targets, it is about the people. Maslow's hierarchy of needs teaches us that once basic needs are met, employees seek fulfillment through meaningful work. So recognition, purpose, and psychological safety aren't just nice to have. They are essential. Companies that cultivate environments that employees thrive get better results. And linking this back to the iceberg model, it means that investment below the surface of what you see is really important. And Lindsay Nickerson shares in the article how ASTA Group, which is a housing association, adopted outcome measures so that instead of just measuring output, they track effectively how employees communicate and collaborate. And this aligns with the job demands resources model, which is the JDR model, which works on the principle that job resources like autonomy, feedback, and support drive both engagement and performance. But the fact is that there's a fine line between being productive and being overproductive. Some employees burn the candle at both ends, whilst others struggle with engagement. And we may all struggle with that at some point. But this is where applying the PERMA model, which is positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, helps. Employees who thrive in these areas, that is the PERMA areas, aren't just more productive, they are actually more resilient. In fact, I was listening to the Diary of the CEO, was it yesterday, where Paul Sibranson, I hope I'm getting the name right, he was on the talking about relationships, actually, like in terms of love relationships. But he added that one of the things that would make relationships work is when the partner actually is able to take their well-being seriously. And there's a link to this, and I can transfer this to the workspace because we're also dealing with people. And so if you're able to take good care of yourself in terms of your well-being, which aligns to the PERMA model, you're able to actually be more productive because you've filled your cup to be able to actually deliver on the work that you have to do efficiently. It's less about squeezing out every last drop of effort out of people, but it's more about creating conditions where they perform at their best without burning out. All that I've discussed so far, how can you actually measure productivity? If emails, hours worked, and even GDP aren't great measures, then what is? I like how Nigel Driffield explains in the article how an individual's level of productivity is influenced by two factors. One is their skills, and the other is the capital or machinery that they use. And he gave a simple but true example, which I will read out. And he says that imagine that you're digging a hole. A person with a spade can dig a hole at a given rate, but a trained person with a digger can dig a lot faster. Annette Andrews of Career Consulting and Coaching also adds in the article that organizations, managers, HR, we should all focus on measuring individual and team contributions in a way that is smarter. And I agree with her. It is about rewarding the right behaviors and setting the right targets, objectives, KPIs, etc. So people are clear, so people understand what it is that's expected of them. The constant references to SMART goals linked to strategy and clear impacts and measures cannot be underestimated. And so what does this mean? We need to measure outcomes over activity, what actually got done, not just what got worked on. You need to also measure impact over input. Does the work contribute to business goals? And then the third point is employee engagement. We are the people motivated, focused, and doing meaningful work. Best workplaces don't just measure output, they optimize conditions that allow employees to excel. My final thoughts are that if we only measure emails sent, calls made, or hours worked, we risk encouraging busyness over effectiveness. True productivity is about creating value, not just completing tasks. It's also about recognizing inputs, not just tracking output, and measuring what matters, not just what's easy to count. So the next time the topic of productivity comes up, we need to remind ourselves that real productivity combines what happens below the surface as well as what is seen above the surface. And then we also need to question how the time spent created value. And so what do you think? Have you ever worked in a place that measured productivity the wrong way? Let's talk in the comments. And so if this video got you thinking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights on how we can make work better, smarter, and actually productive. And of course, let's make progress with care.